Today we are going to start with the chapter Body Fluids and Circulation of class 11th Biology. So let's start. You have learned that all living cells have to be provided with nutrients, oxygen and other essential substances. Also, the waste or harmful substances produced have to be removed continuously for healthy functioning of tissues. It is therefore essential to have efficient mechanism for the movement of these substances to the cells and from the cells. Different group of animals have evolved different methods for this transport. Simple organisms like sponges and coelentrates circulate water from the surrounding through the body cavity to facilitate the cells to exchange these substances. More complex organisms use special fluids within their body to transport such material. Blood is the most commonly used body fluid by most of the higher organisms, including humans, for this purpose. Important line. Blood is most commonly used as a body fluid by most of higher organisms. Another body fluid, lymph, also helps in the transport of certain substances. In this chapter you will learn about the composition and properties of blood and lymph, which is called tissue fluid, and the mechanism of circulation of blood is also explained herein. Blood is a special connective tissue consisting of fluid matrix, plasma and formed elements. Blood is what? A special connective tissue consisting of a fluid matrix, plasma and formed elements. Fluid matrix, plasma and formed elements. Moving ahead to plasma. Plasma is a straw-colored viscous fluid constituting nearly 55% of the blood. How much? 55% of the blood, and 90 to 92% of plasma is water, and proteins contribute 6 to 8% of it. Fibrinogen, globulins and albumins are the major proteins. Fibrinogens are needed for clotting or coagulation of blood. Very important paragraph. Globulins primarily are involved in defense mechanisms of the body, and the albumins help in osmotic balance. Plasma also contains small amounts of minerals like Na positive, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonate, chloride, etc., glucose, amino acid, lipids, etc. They are also present in plasma as they are always in transit in the body. Factors for coagulation or clotting of blood are also present in the plasma. In an inactive form, plasma without clotting factors is what? Serum. Plasma without clotting factors is called serum. Now formed elements. Erythrocytes. Blood is divided into two portions. First is plasma, which constitute 55% of the blood, and other 45% is formed elements. Okay, now moving ahead. Erythrocytes, leukocytes and platelets are collectively called formed element, and they constitute nearly 45% of the blood. Erythrocytes or red blood cells are the most abundant of all the cells in the blood. A healthy adult man has on an average 5 million to 5.5 million of RBCs, cube inverse of blood. RBCs are formed in the red bone marrow in the adults. RBCs are devoid of nucleus in most of the mammals and are biconcave in shape. They have a red color, iron containing complex protein called hemoglobin, hence the color and name of these cells. A healthy individual has 12 to 16 grams of hemoglobin in every 100 ml of blood. These molecules play a significant role in transport of respiratory gases. RBCs have an average lifespan of 120 days, after which they are destroyed in spleen. Spleen is called graveyard of RBCs or reservoir of RBCs. Leukocytes are also known as white blood cells as they are colorless due to lack of hemoglobin. They are nucleated and are relatively less in number, which averages 6,000 to 8,000 of the blood, and leukocytes are generally short-lived. We have two main categories of WBCs, that is granulocytes and agranulocytes. Neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils are different types of granulocyte. Neutrophil, eosinophil and basophil, they are granulocytes, while lymphocytes and monocytes, they are agranulocytes. Neutrophils are the most abundant cells, constitute 60 to 65% of the total WBCs, and basophils are the least. Neutrophils are the most abundant, basophils are the least among them. Neutrophils and the monocytes, they are phagocytic cells which destroy foreign organism entering the body. Basophils secrete histamine, serotonin, and heparin. Basophils secrete histamine, serotonin, heparin, and are involved in inflammatory reactions. Eosinophils 2 to 3% resist infections. Allergy and infections, and are also associated with allergic reaction. Lymphocyte 20 to 25% are of two major types, B and T forms. Both B and T lymphocytes are responsible for immune responses. Platelets are also called thrombocytes, are cell fragments produced from megakaryocytes, special cells in the bone marrow. Blood normally contains 1,50,000 to 3,50,000 platelets per mm cube. Platelets can release a variety of substances, most of which are involved in the coagulation or clotting of blood. A reduction in the number can lead to clotting disorder, which will lead to excessive loss of blood from the body. Now, blood groups. As you know, blood of human beings differ in certain aspects, though it appears to be similar. Various types of grouping of blood has been done. Two such grouping is ABO grouping and RH. They are widely used all over the world. AB is universal recipient and O blood group is a universal donor. ABO grouping is based on the presence or absence of two surface antigens, chemicals that induce immune response on RBCs. Antigens are present on RBCs, namely A and B. Similarly, the plasma of different individuals contain two natural antibodies, proteins produced in response to antigens. They are present in plasma. The distribution of antigens and antibodies in the four group of blood A, B, and O. They are given in the table. You probably know that during blood transfusion, any blood cannot be used. The blood of a donor has to be carefully matched with the blood of a recipient before any blood transfusion to avoid several problems of clumping or destruction of RBCs. The donor compatibility is also shown in the table. Blood group A, antigen is A, antibody is anti-B. Donor group is A and O. Blood group B, antigen B, antibody anti-A. Donor is B and O. AB, antigens both A and B. Antibody is nil. No antibody present. Blood donors group all. AB, A, B, O. Blood group O, antigens nil. Antibodies anti-A, anti-B. Donor group is only O. Moving ahead, from the above mentioned table, it is evident that the blood group O can be donated to the persons with any other blood group, and hence O group individuals are universal donors, most probably O negative. Persons with AB group can accept the blood from persons with AB as well as other groups of blood. Therefore, such persons are universal recipients. RH grouping. Another antigen, the RH antigen, similar to the one present in the rhesus monkeys, hence RH, is also observed on the surface of RBCs of majority, nearly 80% of humans. Such individuals are RH positive, and those in which this antigen is absent, then they are called RH negative. An RH negative person, if exposed to RH positive blood, will form specific antibodies against the RH antigens. Therefore, the RH group should also be matched before transfusion. A special case of RH incompatibility mismatching has been observed between RH negative blood of a pregnant mother with the RH positive blood of the fetus. RH antigens of the fetus do not get exposed to RH negative blood of the mother in the first pregnancy, as the two bloods are well separated by placenta. However, during delivery of the first child, there is a possibility of exposure of maternal blood to the small amounts of RH positive blood of the fetus. Yes, in such cases, the mother starts preparing antibodies against the RH antigen in her blood. In case of her subsequent pregnancy, the RH antibodies from mother, RH negative, can leak into the blood of the fetus and destroy the fetal RBCs. This could be fatal to the fetus or could cause severe anemia and jaundice to the baby. This condition is called erythroblastosis fetalis. This can be avoided by administrating anti-RH antibodies to the mother immediately after the delivery of the first child. Now, coagulation of blood. You know that when you cut your finger or hurt yourself. Your wound does not continue to bleed for a long time. Usually, the blood stops flowing after some times. Do you know why? Blood exhibits coagulation or clotting in response to an injury or trauma. This is a mechanism to prevent excessive loss of blood from the body. You would have observed a dark reddish scum formed at the site of a cut or an injury over the period of time. It is a clot or coagulum formed mainly of a network of threads called fibrins, in which dead and damaged formed elements of blood are trapped. Fibrins are formed by conversion of inactive fibrinogen in the plasma by enzyme thrombin. Thrombins in turn are formed from another inactive substance present in the plasma called prothrombin. An enzyme complex thrombokinase is required for the above reaction. This complex is formed by a series of linked enzymic reactions, cascade process involving a number of factors present in the plasma in an inactive state. Yes, an injury or a trauma stimulates the platelets in the blood to release certain factors which activate the mechanism of coagulation. Certain factors released by the tissue at the site of injury also can initiate coagulation. Calcium ions play a very important role in clotting. Now moving ahead to lymph. As the blood passes through the capillaries and tissues, some water along with many small water-soluble substances move out into the spaces between the cells of the tissue, leaving the larger proteins and most of the formed elements in the blood vessels. This fluid released out is called interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. It has the same mineral distribution as that in plasma. It has the same mineral distribution as that in plasma. Exchange of nutrients, gases, etc. between the blood and the cells always occur through this fluid. An elaborate network of vessels called lymphatic system collects this fluid and drains it back to the major veins. The fluid present in the lymphatic system is called lymph, and lymph is a colorless fluid containing specialized lymphocytes which are responsible for immune responses of the body. Lymph is also an important carrier for nutrients, hormones, etc. Fats are absorbed through lymphin lacteals present in the intestinal villi. Now moving ahead, circulatory pathways. The circulatory patterns are of two types, open and closed. Open circulatory system is present in arthropods, mollusks, in which blood is pumped by the heart, passes through large vessels into open spaces or body cavities called sinuses, and limbs are absent here. Yes, annelids and chordates have a closed circulatory system in which blood is pumped by heart is always circulated through a closed network of blood vessels. This pattern is considered to be more advantageous as the flow of fluid can be more precisely regulated. All vertebrates possess a muscular chambered heart. Fishes have two-chambered heart with an atrium and ventricle. Amphibians and the reptiles except crocodiles have a three-chambered heart with two arteries and single ventricle, whereas crocodile, birds and mammals possess four-chambered heart with two arteries and two ventricles. In fishes, the heart pumps out deoxygenated blood which is oxygenated by the gills and supplied to the body parts, from where deoxygenated blood is returned to the heart. Single circulation. In amphibians and reptiles, the left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the gills, lungs or skin, and the right atrium gets deoxygenated blood from other body parts. However, they get mixed up in a single ventricle which pumps out mixed blood, incomplete double circulation. Birds and mammals, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood received by left and right arteria respectively passes on to the ventricles of the same side. The ventricles pump it out without any mixing up. That is, two separate circulatory pathways are present in these organisms. Hence, these animals have double circulation. Now, let us study the human circulatory system. Human circulatory system. Human circulatory system, also called blood vascular system, consists of a muscular chambered heart, a network of closed branching blood vessels, and blood, the fluid which is circulated. Heart, mesodermally derived organ situated in the thoracic cavity in between the two lungs, slightly tilted towards left. It has the size of clenched fist. It is protected by a double-walled membranous bag, pericardium, enclosing the pericardial fluid. Our heart has four chambers, two relatively small upper chambers called atria and two larger lower chambers called ventricles. A thin muscular wall called interarterial septum separates the right and left atria, whereas a thick-walled interventricular septum separates the left and the right ventricle. The atrium and ventricle of the same side are also separated by thick fibrous tissue called arterioventricular septum. However, each of these septa are provided with an opening through which two chambers of the same size are connected. The opening between right atrium and right ventricle is guarded by a wall formed by three muscular flaps or cusps. That is the tricuspid wall, whereas a bicuspid wall or the mitral wall guards the opening between left atrium and the left ventricle. Opening of the right and left ventricles into the pulmonary artery and the aorta respectively are provided with the semilunar walls. The walls in the heart allows the flow of blood only in one direction, from artery to ventricles and from ventricles to the pulmonary artery or the aorta. These walls prevent the backflow. This is our heart, which is myogenic in nature. This is vena cava, aorta, you can see left atrium, left ventricle. Atrium, both atriums are separated by interarterial septum. These are separated by interventricular septum. Left atrium and left ventricular are separated by the valve. Valve is present, which is bicuspid wall. And right, that is tricuspid wall. Entire heart is made up of cardiac muscles. The walls of ventricles are much thicker than that of arteria. Specialized cardiac musculature called nodal tissue is also distributed in the heart. A patch of this tissue is present in the upper right corner of the right atrium called sinoarterial node. Another mass of this tissue is seen in the lower left corner of the right atrium close to the arterioventricular septum called arterioventricular anode. A bundle of nodal fibers, arterioventricular bundle, continues from the AVN which passes through arterioventricular septa to emerge on the top of the interventricular septum and immediately divides into two right and left bundle. These branches give rise to minute fibers throughout the ventricular musculature of the respective sites and are called Purkinje fibers. The nodal musculature has the ability to generate action potential without any external stimuli, that is, it is auto-excitable. However, the number of action potential that could be generated in a minute vary at different parts of the nodal system. The sinoarterial node can generate the maximum number of action potential, that is 70 to 75 per minute, and is responsible for initiating and maintaining rhythmic contraction activity. Contractile activity of the heart. Therefore, it is a pacemaker. Who is pacemaker? Sinoarterial node. Our heart normally beats 70 to 75 times in a minute. Average is 72 beats per minute. Cardiac cycle. How does the heart function? Let us take a look. To begin with, all the four chambers of the heart are in a relaxed state. They are in a joint diastole. As the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary veins and vena cava flow into the left and right ventricle respectively through left and right artery. The semilunar walls are closed at this stage. The sinoarterial node now generates an action potential which stimulates both the arteria to undergo simultaneous contraction, the arterial systole. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. The action potential is conducted to the ventricular side by the AVN and AV bundle, from where the bundle of His transmits it through the entire ventricular musculature. This causes the ventricular muscles to contract. Ventricular systole. The artery undergoes a relaxation, that is diastole, coinciding with the ventricular systole. Ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid walls due to the attempted backflow of blood into the arteria. As the ventricular pressure increases further, the semilunar walls guarding the pulmonary artery and the aorta are forced open, allowing the blood in the ventricles to flow through these vessels into the circulatory pathways. The ventricles now relax ventricular diastole and the ventricular pressure falls, causing the closure of semilunar walls, which prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricles. As the ventricular pressure declines further, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are pushed open by the pressure in the artery exerted by the blood which was being emptied into them by the veins. The blood now once again moves freely to the ventricles. The ventricles and artery are now again in a relaxed state, which is a joint diastole as earlier. Soon this sinoarterial node generates a new action potential and the events described are repeated. This sequential event in the heart, which is the cyclically repeated, is called cardiac cycle, and it consists of a systole and diastole of both the artery and ventricle as mentioned earlier. The heart beats 72 times per minute, that is the that many cardiac cycles are performed per minute. From this, it could be deduced that duration of a cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. During cardiac cycle, each ventricle pumps out approximately 70 ml of blood, which is stroke volume, and which is or stroke volume or beat volume. The stroke volume multiplied by heart rate gives us the cardiac output, which is 5 liter. Okay, therefore the cardiac output can be defined as a volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute averages, that is 5 liters in a healthy individual. The body has ability to alter the stroke volume as well as the heart rate and thereby the cardiac output. For example, cardiac output of an athlete will be much higher than that of a ordinary man. During each cardiac cycle, two prominent sounds are produced which can be easily heard through stethoscope. The first heard sound is what? Lub. Lub is associated with closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves, whereas the second heard sound, which is dub, is associated with closure of semilunar valve. These sounds are of clinical diagnostic significance. ECG, which is electrocardiograph. Now we are starting with this. You are probably familiar with this scene from a typical hospital television. A patient is hooked up to a monitoring machine that shows voltage traces on a screen and makes the sound pip 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 as the patient goes into the cardiac arrest. This type of machine is used to obtain an electrocardiogram. ECG is a graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. To obtain a standard ECG as shown, a patient is connected to the machine with 3 electrical leads, one to each wrist and to the left ankle, that continuously monitor the heart activity. For a detailed evaluation of the heart function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region. Here we will talk only about a standard ECG. Each peak in ECG is identified with a letter from P to T that corresponds to a specific electrical activity of heart. P wave represents electrical excitation, depolarization of arteria, which led to contraction of both the arteria. QRS complex, P complex, QRS complex, and then T complex. Wait. Where we are each peak in ECG is identified as yes, this is contraction of both arteria. The QRS complex represents depolarization of ventricle, which initiate ventricular contraction. Contraction starts shortly after Q and marks the beginning of systole. T wave represents the return of ventricles from excited to normal, that is repolarization of ventricles. The end of the T wave marks the end of the systole. Obviously, by counting the number of QRS complexes that occur in a given time period, one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. Since the ECG obtained from different individuals have roughly the same shape for a given lead configuration, any deviation from this shape indicates a possible abnormality or disease. Hence, it is of a great clinical significance. Double circulation. The blood flows strictly by a fixed route through blood vessels, arteries, and veins. Basically, each artery and vein consists of 3 layers: an inner lining of squamous endothelium, the tunica intima, a middle layer of smooth muscle and elastic fiber, the tunica media, and an external layer of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers, the tunica externa. Tunica media is comparatively thin in veins. As mentioned earlier, the blood pumped by right ventricle enters the pulmonary artery, whereas the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. The deoxygenated blood pumped into the pulmonary artery is passed on to the lungs, from where the oxygenated blood is carried out by pulmonary veins into left atrium. This pathway constitutes the pulmonary circulation. The oxygenated blood entering the aorta is carried by a network of arteries, arterioles, and capillaries to the tissues, from where the deoxygenated blood is collected by a system of venules, veins, and vena cava and emptied into the right atrium. This is a systematic circulation. The systematic circulation provides nutrient, oxygen, and other essential substances to the tissues and takes carbon dioxide and other harmful substances away from the elimination. A unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract and the liver, called hepatic portal system. The hepatic portal vein carries blood from intestine to liver before it is delivered to the systematic circulation. A special coronary system of blood vessels is present in our body exclusively for the circulation of blood to and from the cardiac musculature. Regulation of cardiac activities. Normal activities of heart are regulated intrinsically, that is, auto-regulated by a specialized muscle nodal tissue. Hence, heart is called myogenic. A special neural center in the medulla oblongata can moderate the cardiac functions through autonomic nervous system. Neural signals through The sympathetic nerves, a part of autonomous nervous system, can increase the rate of heartbeat, the strength of ventricular contraction, and thereby the cardiac output. On the other hand, parasympathetic neural signals decrease the rate of heartbeat, speed of conduction of action potential, and thereby the cardiac output. Adrenal medullary hormones can also increase cardiac output. Parasympathetic, what decreases the heartbeat? Yes. And which is medulla oblongata, moderate the cardiac function through sympathetic increases the heart rate, parasympathetic decreases the heart rate, and adrenal medullary hormones can also increase the cardiac output. High blood pressure, disorders of circulatory system. Hypertension is termed for the blood pressure that is higher than the normal 120/80. In this measurement, 120 mmHg is the systolic or pumping pressure, and 80 mmHg is a diastolic or resting pressure. Repeated checks of blood pressure of an individual is 140 and 90 mmHg or above. It is called hypertension. And high blood pressure leads to heart diseases and also affects vital organs like brain and kidney. Coronary artery disease, often referred to as atherosclerosis, affects a vessel that supply blood to the heart muscle. It is caused by deposits of calcium, fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissues, which makes the lumen of the arteries narrower. Angina is also angina pectoris. A symptom of acute chest pain appears when no enough oxygen is reaching the heart muscle. Angina can occur in man and woman of any age, but it is more common among the middle-aged and elderly. It occurs due to the condition that affect the blood flow. Heart failure. Heart failure means a state of heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. It is sometimes called congestive heart failure because congestion of the lungs is one of the main symptoms of this disease. Heart failure is not the same as cardiac arrest when heart stops beating, or a heart attack when heart muscle is suddenly damaged by an inadequate blood supply. Thank you. This is all the chapter.